Welcome back everyone, hopefully your day is going well. Today I will be going over the basics of elemental effects, elemental thresholds, and elemental interactions within Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn provides optional weapon tutorial quests and hunting grounds. These two do a pretty good job of explaining the basics of elemental effects and giving players a basic idea of how to use elemental ammo within Horizon Zero Dawn. Just in case some players missed those and or want a bit more information, we'll be going over basics and diving just a bit deeper. The information within this video has been extensively tested by myself as well as others within the Horizon community. I would like to thank user Crasp27 directly from the Horizon subreddit for peer reviewing the information within this video to ensure the data given is as accurate as possible. Many YouTubers just want to pump out videos as quickly as possible and tell viewers information based upon assumptions, not actual testing or peer review. This results in a lot of misinformation backed by an argument authority of, YouTubers said it, so it must be true. I strive to provide you guys with factual information and mechanical details, and not just for Horizon Zero Dawn, but also for Horizon Forbidden West in the future. Let's start first with the basics of how to apply elemental effects just so we are all on the same page. Pay attention to the colored circle or wheel with an elemental symbol in the center that shows up above an enemy or machine after hitting an enemy or machine with an elemental ammo type or effect. The inside of the circle fills up starting from the bottom and filling up to the top. When the circle is full and a thin white bar appears along the outside of the circle, this means the player has fully applied a specific elemental effect to their target or targets. The white circle around the outside of the wheel disappearing counterclockwise represents how long the elemental effect has left before it wears off. When the white circle around the edge of the initial circle is gone, the elemental effect is over. Do not spam elemental arrows at a target once that specific element has already been applied. This is a waste of resources and won't do more damage than swapping to a Pierce ammo variant and going for weak points. Okay, applying elements seems simple enough, right? Let's review. Hit the target with elemental ammo in order to fill the circle and apply an elemental effect. After the circle is full and the effect has been applied, pay attention to the white circle that appears along the outside of the initial larger circle in order to recognize when the elemental effect will wear off. Only one elemental effect can be fully applied at a time on a machine. However, just because a machine has been inflicted by a specific elemental effect, this does not mean the player cannot attempt to apply a different elemental effect on the machine or enemy as the player sees fit. Now that we know how to apply elemental effects, we can go over the elemental resistance thresholds for various machines and machine types, as well as go into what weak or strong against an element can actually mean to various machine types. Each of the three sizes of machine have base elemental resistance thresholds that dictate how much of a specific elemental ammo a player will need to use in order to inflict an elemental type on the various machines. Small standard variant machines, with the exception of Watchers at 70, have base elemental resistance thresholds of 75 against fire, ice, and shock. Stalkers have a base elemental resistance threshold of 100, but all other standard variant medium machines have a base elemental resistance threshold of 150 against fire, ice, and shock. Large standard variant machines have a base elemental resistance threshold of 300 for fire, ice, and shock. Standard machine variant corruption elemental resistance thresholds are 50 for small, 100 for medium, and 150 for large. If the machine is strong against an element, with the exception of DLC machines, quadruple the base resistance threshold. If a machine is weak against an element, half the base resistance threshold. Let's use a base variant medium machine as an example. A fire bellowback has a base resistance threshold of 150. However, it is weak to freeze. So we can divide 150 by 2, and it will take around 75 freeze to inflict the freeze elemental effect on a fire bellowback. Adversely, unless a player destroyed a fire sack, it would take 600 fire worth of ammo in order to light a fire bellowback on fire. So basically, if a machine is strong against an element, don't use that elemental type against the machine with the exception of shooting canisters or destroying sacks to inflict an element on a machine by using its own components against it. If a machine is weak to an element, feel free to use that element against the machine. Corrupted machines are all weak to fire. Small corrupted machines have a base elemental resistance threshold value of around 113 with the exception of Corrupted Watchers and Scrappers, who have a base elemental resistance threshold of 100. Medium Corrupted Machines have a base elemental resistance threshold of 225. The exception to this are Corrupted Stalkers, having a base resistance threshold of 150. Large Corrupted Machines have a base elemental resistance threshold value of around 450. Corrupted Machines are immune to the Corruption Elemental effect. Scorchers are a medium-sized DLC machine and do not seem to have a static base resistance threshold. Scorcher's freeze resistance is a value of 300, shock resist is a value of around 325, and it'll take around 250 corruption in order to corrupt a non-demonic Scorcher. Demonic machines, like Corrupted Machines, are immune to corruption, and on top of this, demonic machines are insanely resistant to shock. Demonic light machines' base elemental resist thresholds are around 131. However, the Demonic Watcher has around a 123 base elemental resist threshold. Demonic Stalkers have around a 175 base elemental resist threshold, while the other medium demonic machines that are not strictly DLC machines, such as Longlegs, Bellowbacks, and Shellwalkers, have a base elemental resistance threshold of 300. Demonic Scorchers take around 375 freeze in order to inflict freeze, and are immune to corruption and insanely resistant to both fire and shock. Large demonic machines and demonic Frostclaws, who are technically a medium machine, have a base elemental threshold of around 525. The first elemental effect we will go into is Corruption. If a player inflicts a machine with the Corruption elemental effect, the machine will become corrupted and will attack a nearby target. The important part to remember here is a nearby target, and not a nearby enemy target. That being said, the cautious and patient hunter can use corruption to great effect by getting machines to attack each other, thus reducing the amount of opponents and acting as a form of crowd control. Utilizing corruption as a strategy within combat is often more time consuming than if a player kills a machine themselves. However, watching machines battle each other can be quite entertaining. Secondly, we'll go into Shock. Shock is pretty straightforward. Shock stuns the targets once players reach the target's elemental resistance threshold. This stun and moment of opportunity gives the player a short reprieve from one-on-one combat and can leave a target vulnerable for an easy kill. Shock can also be useful to take a machine out of the fight for a moment if multiple targets are threatening a player. A critical from the spear will end the stun effect from Shock, but a player can hit the machine with other types of attacks just until the shock stun wears off, and get in their critical spear hit last moment. Third, we will go into Fire. Fire is pretty fantastic, and quite versatile within this game. Corrupted machines and a large amount of machines in the game are weak to Fire. Fire does not do all that much damage on harder difficulties, until a player coils their fire weapon of choice effectively. Check out my The Best Way to Optimize Weapons 2021 edition video for more information on how to effectively coil fire weapons. I've watched a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn streamers throughout the years, and I see players spamming fire after a target is already inflicted by fire pretty regularly. Players are really better off swapping to pierce damage arrows or a non-elemental damage type after inflicting a machine with fire. There is no real damage benefit to continue spamming an elemental ammo type once a target is already inflicted by that specific elemental type. Players should generally only want to use fire ammo to light a machine or target on fire, or to shoot a canister in order to cause a fiery explosion to the same effect. Do not spam fire arrows after a machine is on fire. This is just a waste of blaze. Fire has many uses besides just damage. Fire can also act as a minor crowd control effect, as inflicting a machine with fire can cause them to react and panic for a moment. An example of fire as crowd control would be lighting a Glinthawk on fire and, as a result, bringing the Glinthawk to the ground, making them easy prey. Or lighting a machine on fire, giving players a small reprieve from their attacks, while the target machine dances in circles momentarily. Something important to note and go over before we get into Freeze is about elemental ammo interactions with specific machine weak points. Any elemental canister a player sees, whether on or off a machine, can be triggered by an arrow of that elemental type, no matter how much of that elemental type the arrow does. At times, armor is protecting canisters and must be removed before a player can shoot a canister. There are 3 types of elemental canisters: Blaze, Freeze, and Shock. Shock canisters are called power cells when on a machine and are considered sparkers after being removed from a machine. The other 2 canisters are easy to identify by name and color. Green canisters are Blaze canisters, blue canisters are Freeze canisters. This is an elemental sack. Do not spam elemental ammo at these. That is not how this mechanical interaction works effectively. Just pop the sack with some pierce damage or explosive damage, watch the glorious explosion, and then take advantage of whatever elemental type was inflicted. Despite scrappers not having a visible canister, their back weak point is actually a power cell and can be used to easily stun a scrapper with shock arrows. The existence of elemental canisters is one of the reasons I heavily favor elemental bows over slings. Finally, we have Freeze. Oh, Freeze. Freeze allows for some pretty insane damage within this game and is a fairly popular tactic against medium and large machines for seasoned hunters. Once a machine is frozen, pierce damage, which is basically physical damage ammo types, get a 200% bonus in damage to the weak point of a frozen target, and a 300% bonus in damage to the body of a frozen target. Blast ammo does 25% bonus damage to frozen targets. While not terrible, the cost of this ammo type and lack of damage multiplier makes pierce ammo the best ammo type to use against frozen targets. Just in case players are not familiar, pierce damage types are hardpoint arrows, hunter arrows, precision arrows, ice rail cannon shots, and rattler metal bolts. A frozen target's multiplier stacked on top of a Thunderjaw heart with a 500% bonus to pierce damage before freeze, or a Rockbreaker vent with a 400% bonus to pierce damage before freeze, can cause the damage a machine can take in this game to get rather high. The max damage a player can do in this game is 30,000 damage to a Demonic Thunderjaw's heart on story, while the Demonic Thunderjaw is frozen. This damage number, of course, is only possible due to freeze, and 30,000 damage is a bit over twice the amount of health a Demonic Thunderjaw has. On Ultra Hard, the highest amount of damage a player can do is 5,250 to a Thunderjaw heart, again, thanks to Freeze. Freeze combined with pierce damage allows a player to do high amounts of damage in a considerably short amount of time. On Ultra Hard, players can casually do 1,103 damage from a max damage triple hardpoint volley to the body of a frozen target. Something important to note about how Freeze functions mechanically: Freeze does not slow machines. Freeze makes machines more vulnerable to blast and pierce ammo types and momentarily stuns a machine once inflicted. As a little bonus, here are a couple of extra things I wanted to share before we conclude this video. First of all, I have not forgotten about ancient machines. They're just a bit different than any of the other machines. Corruptor's elemental threshold resistance is around 225 for shock and freeze, and around 190 for fire. Deathbringers seem to have an extremely high elemental resistance threshold. I believe it is around 1650 for freeze, around 1100 for fire, and around 1350 for shock. Admittedly, I only tested the Deathbringers from the final mission of the game. Other Deathbringers may follow a different resistance pattern. Deathbringers seem to have a noticeable elemental weak point that makes buildup a bit easier for shock and fire by shooting at the nose/face of the Deathbringer. If a specific machine is strong or neutral to an elemental ammo type, the machine will take around 8 seconds without being hit by a strong or neutral elemental ammo type for the elemental buildup to decay. If the machine is weak to an elemental ammo type, it will take around 12 seconds for the elemental buildup to decay after ceasing to shoot that elemental ammo type at a machine. Deathbringer's elemental buildup, however, goes down after not being hit by an elemental ammo type in around 3 seconds for freeze and around 4 seconds for fire and shock. The final Deathbringer of the game seems to have elemental buildup follow after 2 seconds for freeze, fire, and shock. Scorchers and Demonic Scorchers seem to have reverse decay times for 2 elements. Despite being strong to fire, it will take 12 seconds for the fire elemental buildup to decay on a Scorcher, and despite being weak to freeze, it will take around 8 seconds for the freeze elemental buildup to decay on a Scorcher. I think it's possible Freeze and Fire's decay rate for Scorchers were accidentally swapped during development, as this does not follow the normal patterns of decay for other machines. Shock seems to function normally for Scorchers, however. They are strong against shock, and it takes around 8 seconds for the shock elemental buildup to decay. Fire Claws are fairly unique. If their center weak point or fire unit has not been destroyed, they can thaw themselves and remove the freeze effect. Adversely, Frost Claws can extinguish themselves from the fire effect if their center weak point or freeze unit has not been destroyed. If a player destroys the true shoulder freeze or fire sacks and freeze or fire unit of a Frost Claw or Fire Claw, this will cause the Frost Claw to become indefinitely frozen and the Fire Claw to become indefinitely on fire unless inflicted with another elemental effect. If a player destroys the processing unit of Trampler, the Trampler will burn indefinitely. This does mean that the Fire Claw and Trampler will burn to death on their own without needing any additional damage once previously mentioned weak points are destroyed. At times, elemental ammo will be partially mitigated by armor, and won't add as much buildup as it should. Adversely, weak points can at times slightly increase the buildup process. Shellwalker containers and Behemoth containers are completely immune to elemental effects and will not help the buildup whatsoever if hit. Thank you for watching my video. I sincerely hope you all enjoyed my elemental tutorial for Horizon Zero Dawn and learned something new today. If you have any questions or input, feel free to comment below. As always, please like, follow, and subscribe for more Horizon Zero Dawn content. Be sure to stay tuned for Horizon Forbidden West content coming next year. If you enjoyed the Horizon IP and are looking for a fan-run environment to discuss the IP with other enthusiastic fans, feel free to join the public Horizon Discord, The Metal World, linked below. Make sure to check me out on Twitch, linked below. I mostly play Horizon Zero Dawn, but I do play other games too. Well, that's all for today, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and please, take care of yourselves out there.